Oh, I guess I should also turn this a little. You all registered. I ask you that every time, but I always want to make sure. You'll finish in 3.5 years or 4 years. Right.
I wasn't even thinking I was but she had me, like, if you have your requirement classes as an elective, but then, like, you can get it done faster.
Right.
And I was like, okay. So she had me do social welfare, but we couldn't find the class for it. So I ended up, so I had to be in art.
Okay. So that's one of the required classes you have to graduate.
Art, no.
I know you have to take something like either acting or music or I feel like you do. Let's open it up. Let's make sure.
I don't want to do it. If I can be, I'm gonna be in the background, playing the light.
Right. That's where I would want to be. All right, here it is. All right, so if we zoom in, there is English, math, history, humanities, social. Yeah, it does have that. Maybe it would just be under here, additional electives.
Yeah, because I think one class, I think we had Friday, another class. No, I don't know what class it was, but they have the class where I was available.
Okay.
To do it, it was messing up. The class got picked.
Right.
So she was like, okay, so do you want to take art or history? I was like, I'm just going to take art.
But you already took 16 this semester or 18? And then next semester.
Like, you need five.
Right, so that's at least 15 or 16.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Lakira is here for attendance. Cool. Hopefully, Lakira is registered too. I think they extended it till November 10th or 12th, so you guys don't have any, what do you call it? They have like a penalty if you don't register in time.
Yeah.
So, hopefully you guys are good there. We are finishing up with, oh yeah, look at that. Actually, I'm going up for associate. I'm assistant professor. And then when you teach 5 years, you can go up for promotion to associate and tenure. And some people do tenure first and then they do associate. Some people do them both at the same time. And some people can come in as an associate professor, like the old dude in psychology. He was a full professor up at Toledo. So those are like all the promotions. So you think you're done with your bachelor's, master's, doctorate, but you're not. Then you have assistant professor, associate professor, full professor, and then tenured.
They look a lot.
It is. I'm 43 years old, so I've been doing this for 20 some years of education. Well, yeah, 16th grade, because you're in 13th grade. Technically, when I graduated senior year, you're 16th grade. I added a second major on and graduated with 17th grade theology and psychology. Then I did 3 years of grad school. That was like 20th grade. Then I did 8 years for my doctorate. It's like 28th grade. So you feel like assistant professor is 29th, associate's 30th. I'll be at like 31st grade at the age of 45. Right. Right. So I was pulling stuff about, did you want to be this kind of social worker? With families and youth. So I did have a few. Actually, yes. So this is the first one. And then I had an addictions video, but this was
In an ideal world, every family would be stable and supportive and every child's needs would be met. But in reality, families who live in poverty with mental illness, chemical
So they're showing that he can't pay the bills, maybe because he drank too much.
abuse or other issues may need the help of child, family, and school social workers to find their way. An important role of these social workers is to help clients understand the range of services available to them, connect them to organizations and programs that will help them, and teach them how to advocate for themselves in the future. Good record keeping of conversations and activity is critical. Child and family social workers protect vulnerable children and help families function more effectively. They often connect families with housing, childcare, and welfare assistance. They may promote better parenting skills, coordinate adoptions, and find foster homes for abandoned or abused children. School social workers deal with problems like bullying, truancy, and teenage pregnancy, and they may also advise teachers. Some travel to multiple schools in a school district. Child, family, and school social workers work for government agencies, nonprofits, school systems, and in residential facilities. A bachelor's degree in social work is the most common requirement to enter the field, though many also earn a master's in social work. While the work can be emotionally taxing, child, family, and school social workers help lighten the load for struggling children and families and give them hope for a brighter future.
What's that?
My voice was so weird.
It was.
It doesn't fit the video.
Right. It was different. I was trying to find a few videos that had children and family social workers, and at least starting this PowerPoint, because we'll finish it Thursday as usual. But the most important here, so do you know any single parent families? Because that happens now. It's like 50% of families married have a divorce, so mom and dad live separate. What's that?
They weren't married.
Right.
They broke up after I was married.
How old is he?
After he was born, a couple years after he was born, my dad, he ended up living with my grandma for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom, she had like her apartment. So it goes to his house on the weekend, like every other weekend.
Yeah.
And the weekend he worked, he went on the break.
Okay. Because he was still living at your.
And then like he moved out, which was sad. I didn't know.
Right. It's a, it's a reality. It happens. So, what's that?
He was supposed to move out.
Oh, your grandma's?
No, yeah, my dad. He had 3 kids in one room.
I know. That's what we're talking about, doing bunk beds.
That makes me kind of fun. It makes me kind of fun, but they're gonna be. Yeah, I have to share a room.
Right. Yeah, so that's what we're fighting with, because we probably won't get qualified for a loan to buy a house. And that's okay. We have a house. We were just thinking of moving so that they would each have their own bedroom, but we don't have. I shared a room growing up. What's the difference?
It's boy and girl. One boy, one girl.
We have one boy and one girl right now, so.
Oh, that's fine. It's different. If it was 2 boys, then yeah, I understand. I have to get, like, after a while, I have to get my own room.
Right.
So,
So if we have another boy, we could get rooms,
you want 3 kids?
3 or 4.
You want 4?
She wants 4 or 5.
Wow.
I know.
Personally.
Right. That right there is a true social worker. It's called, we give our client self-determination. So whatever they would like to choose to do, even if they want to have 7 kids, that's okay. 2 bunk beds in each room.
No. Oh my God. At this point,
Well, so we did, but
You can renovate it.
well, we have a 6-acre farm we were going to build, but that's the problem is we won't get qualified for a loan because they don't pay social work teachers enough. They would do off last year's income, which is about 40-some thousand a year. But we could wait until next year because if I do get that promotion and tenure, that would help. Who knows? I did find they would build a 4-bedroom house for $167,000 on that farm. It's $167,000. Right. So usually you pay for those over 30 years.
Wait, you're taking a loan out of the bank?
That's usually how you have to do it. So I can't remember if I did TK or, oh shoot, I just deleted all those emails. That's funny. ZJ. So here's the price list. ZJHomes.com price list. That's maybe I should just go to the website. I don't remember it. So if you did that, ZJHomes.com, is it /price list? Maybe I'll just do that and then. So yeah, this is what we were looking at. And the only thing we would, so this is something to know when you are, I have already filled it out. It's annoying. Sure, let's do it again. I know. So if we were to build, which is weird that it is, I just always make stuff up on that. Let's say, I think that's pretty much what we have to. Yes, I own the lot, luckily. It's a farm of 5 acres. So here's what they look like. This is the fun part. Oh, you have to download it, that's why, okay. And I didn't know a ranch house costs more than a 2-story house. Have you ever heard of that?
I can see that now, because like in a ranch, like way bigger.
I guess.
Have more, I don't know, like some people have horses.
Right. Yeah. So here's the ranches. And I guess, but that is kind of small, but you could do 3 and 2. Well, wait, no, the 2-story is cheaper. It's probably because it's less roofing materials. Oh, there's a cheap ranch. I didn't even think about that one. So that would be, they do give you floor plans too. And so, oh, this doesn't have the, yeah, here it is. So this is the other one. Right. But I forgot to show my wife this one. Because even if you add a basement, it's $169,999. Oh, wait. Oh, the garage you have to add on. I didn't see that. Oh, that's a bummer. Of course you have to add on the garage. Okay. Anyway. Or you do this one. Yeah, the garage is that right there. So basement, if you do the basement, you do that. And then they also show what they look like. You were saying like floor plans. But this is what she didn't like. So this goes along with the cost of housing. So they look kind of like those. Those are all the ranches. Those are ranches, which is weird. Here's the 2 stories down here. There's your 2-story plans. So apparently this one's the most affordable.
You gotta pay extra for the building.
On the one you do, yes. I think it was, well, I had it right here. It was the New Richmond. So let's see what the New Richmond looks like. There it is. I guess because you add that part of the garage. That looks like the garage. So if you didn't have it, it would just be that little teeny tiny thing. 1,200 square feet. And How do you fit 3 bedrooms in there? That's what I would like to know. This will be interesting. So that's optional. There's the master. That's what my wife doesn't like. She wants all the bedrooms basically on the same side. And the only way you can do that is a 2-story. And like I said, it's this one. So if we were to do cost of housing, I guess it is this one that's the best, because that is 5. Is it the Bethel? 174 plus 28, or even 169 plus 28. That's almost 199.9. So if you finance a house that is 199, here's usually how I find out what the payment is.
I'm wrong with that.
Do you go on here?
Yeah.
So if you bought something for 161, it would be $761 a month. But we were saying it was what, more like 199? So here we go. Here's one that's 189. Is there anything else close to 200? So if you did this, it's $800 a month. Oh, 872. Never mind. Is that just land? Okay. So that being said, I think it was Steubenville that I was shopping in. And it's on the border of West Virginia. Yeah, I know. Wouldn't that be creepy? That's if we did decide to take this job offer that's across the country. No, across the state, not across the country. But we're probably going to stay. We like it here. And we're from here. So, and she was even calling this place Stupidville instead of Steubenville. Yeah, this is the name of the town. Is Steubenville. But that is weird. I thought that we had no way. Did that house sell? I'm scared. I think the one that we were looking at sold. It was on there. So have you ever looked at houses?
No. It's terrible because like the banisters, the paint is kind of like peeling off.
Okay.
And then like her bathroom don't have like, a little air vent in it. Just
Right.
The window, so we keep the window closed as close get in.
Yeah.
So since we don't have like the air vent, it gets moldy.
Right. So
she just don't look like.
You're in Indiana. Does she own it or rent it?
She rents it.
Okay.
She does not want to own that house.
Right. Well, here is a good descriptor of what's going on with the housing prices. And it is an issue. So I just don't know if the video will play for us. That does stink. I do have a little bit of both. It does say now playing, but that's weird because where is the video? And it really is. So like this really is affecting a lot of families because like in that sense, we're stuck. There it is. A lot of how families are stuck and you can't go anywhere. And it is what it is, but it is affecting people's psyche or mental health or families going through addictions. I wanted to see if anybody else had a question before we. Okay. She said, oh, the live is buffering. It's fine now. Your live has been buffering for like 5 minutes on my phone and computer. I will be emailing you my questions about the essay. Cool. That's good. Yeah, sometimes if it is buffering, it actually could be on their end. Do you know what buffering is?
I'm not that old. I'm not even old. I love buffering.
Right.
I had definitely said buffering.
But the nice thing about YouTube Live is that it will save it, so you can always go back to it. Like if it is buffering, and we'll finish more on this, children and families. single parent families, blended families, gay and lesbian families, multi-generational families. We're seeing more and more of that. And grandparent headed families. That's what our current research is on, grandparents raising grandchildren. I've written some papers on it.
I don't think do that anyway.
They do.
It's just like the single families don't do it.
They do. And it also can take a toll on that. I don't know what the right word to use is. Like,
Even like, don't they, cause like, don't like, once you get older, you don't really work.
sometimes you're right. Maybe that's what the issue is. Nowadays, so many people are in debt or in poverty. They have to work. And then the grandparents are still stuck with taking care of the kids, working 9 to 5.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So you're right. That's
They can't really work a 9 to 5.
right, unless if they're at Walmart. Right. So we'll dip into some of the family-centered services Thursday, like counseling for families, individual counseling, and all of those. Families usually do the interventions. So this is just a commercial for the next one on Thursday too. So like what people struggle with. So this dude had a big family.
Because we love you. We want you to get help.
Who did you?
You've lost
He got dreadlocks.
this addiction.
Yeah.
You've lost your whole passion for life.
I think,
So sad
unless if
to
that was
see
his
you.
brother.
Sad. I love your sense of humor, and I think that will help you through this, through the tough times. You have always been a survivor. But we
It was
don't
this guy
want
right
you.
in the front.
You've got to fight for your life
No?
Yeah.
and really survive. You have lost your moral compass. You're doing things that you never would have done because of this addiction. I feel like I've lost my son, and I want my son back. I miss the rail, Eric, and I know you can do this. You have to. You need to take this opportunity to work on yourself for however long it takes and find yourself again. I know you're in there. If you do not take this chance, then you will not be allowed to live at home. You'll have to leave. Dad and I have to get healthy ourselves, and we hope you will too. We love you and look forward to you moving on and becoming self-sufficient.
So they're basically kicking him out, if that makes sense. You get kicked out to go to treatment or get kicked out to go do drugs on the street or drink on the street.
Election day is
And
just,
that's the tough part. Any questions about election day too? You guys can register to vote here on campus if you want. Or absentee ballot.
around the corner, and one,
I have a question about that.
Yes.
So we want us back.
Let me pull it up again just so. It's really just experiences with diversity and knowing that we will have those experiences with diversity and how to handle it as a social worker. So here's the exact assignment. I know Adriel Mitchell had a question. She said she'll email him. Hopefully this can answer them too, but I'll respond to the email. So engaging your client to share experiences of alienation, marginalization, or oppression. And sometimes that's the trauma that your client has experienced. It could have been bullying. It could have been excluded in some way or another. And so it's just write a 2-page essay, explain how prejudice comments of strangers have an impact on a social work client. So it could be racism. Also, in general, the extent to which cultures, structures, and values may oppress, marginalize, alienate, create or enhance privilege and power in relation to a social work client. So it could be even like One of the things that they talk about that still goes on is redlining. This is in terms of housing discrimination. So, and I'll finish up with this, but this is kind of how redlining has affected a lot of folks. And yeah, like the vacant blighted properties that drag down, but the whole roots of redlining. And here's what redlining is. I know it's 6 minutes, but this kind of helps explain it a lot more detailed than.
Ask the Soul House is back with a brand new season to answer unlimited questions about your house.
Is this a commercial?
This homeowner already has a ton of great plans, it just needs to be reorganized.
We tackled
All right,
all
we'll
sorts of
skip it.
projects. That's why it'd be pretty cool to actually use a two-person crosscut saw.
Nice bounce, Anthony, and now it's on pre-cut.
Watch new episodes of Ask the Soul House. Don't miss a minute of it.
A new survey finds Minneapolis and St. Paul among the worst places for Black Americans to call home.
The racial inequity in this state is horrific.
You think about wealth inequality in the United States today, that's directly attributable to problems associated with housing, denial of housing, the inability of African Americans to acquire wealth in the same way that other groups were able to by virtue of having access to affordable housing is one of the problems that impact those communities of color today.
About 75% of white families own the homes that they occupy, about 25% of black families own the homes that they occupy. It's actually the largest, in terms of percentage gap.
They're explaining here how even racism goes on in banking and lending. If they think that you are a minority, they're less likely to lend to you. So this still goes on, even though they've been fighting it. And that this is a good example of how it could affect you even
Out in the country.
today.
The major impediment to civil rights for African Americans, economic opportunity, these racially restrictive covenants, private contracts between individuals that allow them to dictate to whom they'll sell their property.
And so you already see how hard it is to buy a house. And then with this in mind, if the bank isn't going to lend you money, like right now, I don't know if I could get money to buy a house. And they are showing research that like this has roots to the 1930s and 1940s.
Covenants exist across the country in Minneapolis. The covenants were first put in 1910. At that point, developers could start buying up large sections of farmland that adjoin the city.
When they start selling off the individual lots, that's really when their racial covenants kind of injected into the record.
Racial covenants tells you who can or cannot live, lease, even occupy certain spaces.
And this could explain why you see sections of housing that is mostly white and Caucasian and then mostly African American. Do you see that in your city too? Okay.
It's mostly like it's from Arizona, it's plain mostly white.
Right.
It's usually like out. It's mostly out in the country, but like Briansville is perhaps still in the inner city, but it's mostly white.
Okay.
You don't know that person there.
Okay. And that this explains the history of it. So it's 100 years old in the making.
100% of these covenants are aimed at African Americans.
Redlining, that's what they call it. So yeah, during the Great Depression in the 30s and 40s.
They made color-coded maps of all the largest cities in the United States, and they broke cities down into 4 different areas. Red is considered hazardous, that's the worst. Yellow is considered definitely declining. Blue is considered still desirable, and green is considered the best. So areas that were predominantly African American or majority minority, or really in a lot of cases, even if there's a few non-white people there, that's often enough to be redlined. The FHA refused to give an area a green line designation. Again, this is the best designation that they'll offer unless, and I'm quoting again, restrictive covenants are already in place. That line's from the FHA underwriting.
In a lot of ways.
The FHA is the Federal Housing Authority. So if they didn't write this stuff in the 1910s and 20s, they redlined the district during the Great Depression when a lot of our housing lending began.
The practice of redlining, which didn't start until the 1930s, institutionalized and spread racial covenants all over the country because suddenly developers got sanctioned, they got direction from the federal government saying this is best practices.
Our community was redlined. Simple as that. Now, as a community, we made the best of it and we produce a great many influential people as well. And a lot of that came from having developed a pretty powerful community.
So it took them 30 years from 1910 to 1948 to stop it. But if you think about all those families put into certain houses and you grow up there, more than likely you're going to stay there for a long time. Like I have communities, I actually grew up in a community that was right on the line. So we had Black, white, Latino, everybody. And even in the 70s, there was race riots in Kennedy Heights of Cincinnati. But it's hard to move a family out if you know like where your grandparents live or wherever. A lot of folks live in places for a long time, right? Like they don't move. So it's already set in place by 1948. Fair Housing Act then came in 1968, and it made writing of racially restricted covenants illegal. But again, that's how many years of damage? Like 50 years, and people have lived there for 50 years. Do you think they're going to go move to the next neighborhood over after living there 50 years? That's kind of the question here. The deeds are the land.
Fourth Avenue was now referred to as Crack Avenue. Up and down Fourth Avenue throughout the neighborhood, there were tough times.
This very persistent myth that northern cities never had formal segregation. The South had Jim Crow, and look at those signs. Well, racial covenants did the work of Jim Crow in the North, all over the North.
So even though covenants are now illegal, kind of this yawning chasm of wealth inequality that emerged as a result of covenants is still very much with us.
One other thing to consider in Cincinnati, see where the highway cuts through? For whatever reason, in Cincinnati, when they built I-71, it cut through. Guess which neighborhood did they choose? Yep. So that also then created more division and split and uncertainty and whatnot. So that was the other messed up thing that occurred even as late as the 60s, so 1968.
Identifying racial covenants, however, has proved remarkably challenging. The only way to find racial covenants are to read warranty deeds. We're looking at about 3 million deeds in Hennepin County between 1900 and 1960, and each deed on average runs about 3 pages. So we're in the ballpark of 10 million or so pages of text. So what we're doing with Mapping Prejudice is we're using digital tools to help us identify the deeds that do contain racially restrictive covenants. We ask volunteers to help us transcribe them. And those answers I then export, and this actually gives me enough data to build a map.
There are actually two categories, it's business industrial and undeveloped.
With this data set that the Mapping Prejudice team has built, we asked the question, how have racial covenants affected present day socioeconomic outcomes?
And the results that we find are that covenants were a way to lift the house prices by keeping people of certain races and colors out. What we find is a causal link between covenants in the past and 3 present-day socioeconomic outcomes. We find that houses that were covenanted in the past have, on average, 15% higher house values today compared to houses that were not covenanted. We also find that covenanted areas have lower African American residents and lower African American home ownership rates compared to areas within Minneapolis that do not have covenants.
I think you can make very powerful arguments about how can we reframe contemporary policy through more of an equity lens to help mitigate some of this damage that's resulted from racial covenants.
And I want everyone with this map to imagine themselves in this landscape of privilege and disenfranchisement.
So does that make sense?
Oh, basically I do that, something like that.
Right, you can write how even the discrimination policies from 100 years ago, even though you don't think it would affect neighborhoods that you see today, it did. And there's evidence, there's research, that was 2019 research. So this is modern day research showing that it affected the housing prices, it affected not so much your income, but your overall wealth. So if you own a house that's worth, say, 50 to 100,000, but if you had it in the like nice neighborhood of Wilberforce or Xenia that we looked at, even though that house was a piece of junk, they wanted $200,000 for it, which would be $1,000 a month. But if you owned in the Redline district, you only own something for 50 or 100,000. So how are you able to move and go buy another house that's more than 50 to 100,000? You have to stay in those low-income neighborhoods, so to speak, because you sell your house for 100,000, so you probably need to buy another $100,000 house. You can't. Not easy for people to sell a $100,000 house and then buy a $200,000 house because it's double the price. Sometimes it happens. Yes, we do have economic freedom and jobs in America, but it's harder. There's still evidence that women get paid only 70% of what men do. Some minorities get paid than what Caucasians get paid. So just things of that you can add in, like different research articles that show that.
Oh, like, do I have to base it on social? So like, I have to like look up an article and read it and like.
It does help if you have an article. If you want to cite this video, that's okay too. You would just go to like PBS, Redlining Jim Crow Laws North, or if you cite an article, there's going to be a lot of articles on it. I know that there is, just because, you would go to like scholar.google.com. Interesting. They have stuff on digital redlining. So this is even in Columbus. Poor communities' access to fintech and implications for financial inclusion. So yeah, it can be any article, but you just make your point. It doesn't have to be written by a social worker, but it's showing how like discrimination can be more than just like a hillbilly racist yelling racial slurs. It can be like financial. It can be like housing market. It can be redlining districts that, whatever you choose. And if you choose to cite the video, that's fine. I know it's ambiguous, and I kind of do that on purpose so you can choose what you want, but I know that makes it hard to